All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. My name is Tiffany Wright. I am one of three co-founders of Coco Coalition and the acting executive director. Very grateful to have you all here tonight for this amazing conversation that we're going to have around Black women involvement in civic engagement, voter education, and just what to be aware of to be a more civically engaged individual, not just with this primary election coming up, but in election periods and in community period, okay? Because it's really important. Folks often focus on primary elections, but we have midterms and we have so much in between, which our panel will be discussing tonight. So a little bit about Coco Coalition. We were established in 2018, and our mission is focused on empowering and liberating Black women through holistic and mental health offerings. That's resources, programs, that's services, that's events. And we're very much dedicated to creating opportunities and spaces for Black women to feel seen, heard, and understood. So tonight is about giving Black women opportunity to share about their relationship in terms of politics and civic engagement, because being a Black woman is very much a political statement in and of embodiment in and of itself. And so we'll be talking about some different things tonight. So the ask is that you remain on mute until we open up opportunity for Q&A. This event will be recorded, as we will be reposting and sharing with our Coco community. So I would like to start off again by welcoming everyone, welcoming our panelists. Hey, y'all. I'm going to read some bios of these very amazing women that we have. So starting with Naomi. She is an award-winning public affairs leader with over a decade of experience in advocacy, nonprofit leadership, and civic engagement. She's the Director of Policy and Government Affairs for the Denver Foundation, overseeing the foundation's strategy for advocacy and grant making to advance systems change in Metro Denver. Naomi holds a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Communication from the University of California, Davis. Go Aggies. She's a certified nonprofit professional and has earned a certification in corporate social responsibility from the University of Colorado. She is an active member of the Metro Denver community, serving on government, philanthropic, and nonprofit boards and advisory committees. Everybody give it up for Naomi. Hey, girl, hey. All right. Next, we have Tamara Michael. She's an attorney with over a decade of experience advising companies on commercial law, data privacy, risk management, and regulatory compliance. She also consults small businesses and individuals on ways to expand their reach through strategic partnerships and networking. Outside of her work, she's a wife and mother of two. Tamara enjoys spending her free time gardening and doing DIY home improvement projects. Everybody give it up for Tamara. Hey, girl. Also my lovely soror, member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Just lift that up. And the Shianne Smith. She is a Los Angeles native, fierce community advocate, and millennial civic engager who enjoys connecting social policy to nonprofit services. As the former vice president of the Black Los Angeles Young Democrats, Shianne spearheaded key communication strategies that led a national response to leak tapes in Los Angeles City Hall, calling out racism, anti-Blackness, and gerrymandering. In 2014, Shianne founded the New Black Era, a social change organization that focuses on increasing millennial civic engagement with the mission to build communities, influence policy, and encourage social responsibility for African Americans in Los Angeles County. Shianne has savvy diplomatic skills and a natural affinity for cultivating relationships and persuading, convening, facilitating and building consensus among diverse individuals. In 2020, Shianne founded Pretty Political LLC, a millennial communications firm based in LA. She currently serves as an appointed delegate for the California Democratic Party District 55 and is the Director of Communications at Innovate Schools. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts from Grambling State University, Master's in Nonprofit Management from Antioch University, and a graduate certificate in grant writing and administration. Everybody give it up for Shianne. Okay, so clearly you see we have a very diverse background when it comes to how these ladies entered in policy and civic engagement. And I'm really always inspired by the people that I know, because I know these people, and they're magical. So I'm grateful to share them with you. Okay, so first I want to start with a little background. I want to know, what is your outlook on the role of Black women impacting change in our society throughout history and today? And why did you become a Black woman embodying this idea of a change maker, even if you don't consider yourself a change maker? Let's start with Shianne.
I was going for my mute button again. Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany and the Coco Coalition. It's always good to convene with family. I feel like it wasn't a choice, right? Like as a Black woman, just historically, like even with going back to the suffrage movement in 1913, even when it comes to, every opportunity when it comes to like just speaking up, like Black women have always been in the forefront. And I have always been inspired by like the people who talk too much, because I talk too much. The people who dared to be the one to do the biggest, boldest things, whether it was joining the women's suffrage movement that made it all about white women and Black women joined. I'm sure you guys know, but I studied these things, right? And just growing up knowing that like it's been in my DNA, and then seeing my mother, my grandmother, my grandparents, like my community, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, just continue to be inspired by the people who've just stood up. But then like it becomes a little natural when you're naturally the one, for me, the oldest sister, in the friend group, always speaking up for someone, always the one coming at the forefront at a certain time in your life. In my life, it came like, passion, interest, and natural affinity and talent and purpose just aligned, where this is who I am, and you can run from it, which I've tried to, and you still circle back and end up being in the same space. And then you're reminded that you stand on shoulders of giants. And I often think about, like, I have a 1-year-old daughter now, so I often think about like the next generation now more than ever. And I'm like, well, whose shoulders are they going to stand on if we don't stand on the ones for the people, the ones ahead of us, so that's sort of like what got me in, kept me in, but also just being someone who just never was able to be quiet. I still have that problem to this day. And so to put that energy in a place where I can affect so many people, it makes it easier to do the work.
Yes. Just want to just rest in that for a moment. Talking about legacy is so important, right? And people take for granted the work that people put in, and they take for granted the idea that they now have to be those people, to your point, for future generations, right? Like it can't just stop. Like you have to continue. Someone has to continue contributing to the change. So thank you so much for lifting that up. Tamara, how about yourself? What role do you feel like Black women play in social change? And what do you think inspired you to be a Black woman that is a change maker?
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you for hosting this conversation tonight and inviting my contribution here. What can you really say? A Black woman, it's like being a Black woman is just it's a superpower, really, right? We have so many of the hard things, the things, the odds stacked against us, and we just have this innate ability to understand the assignment like none other. Anytime there's an issue that's brought to the forefront, you put it in the hands of a Black woman and it's going to get done. For me, I was really inspired this year, particularly. I don't know how many of you were part of the 44,000, but when you think about how that got started, right? It was like, I think I got a text message from a friend, and then all of a sudden you started getting these text messages, and it's like, oh, I got to be a part of this. And just, as Shianne just previously mentioned, standing on the shoulders of other change makers in the past and seeing, these grassroots um, endeavors just take off, and so much change coming from these small steps. After being a part of that call, after seeing the difference that it made, $1.5 million in less than 4 hours in one night after one telephone call, like, you've got to get in and see what your small part can be. And for me, just allowing myself to take a small step, coming and having these important conversations, supporting causes that impact me directly. It just seems like an obligation. It's not just something that, oh, this is cool. It's fun to be able to talk about these things. These are really important issues. And it's almost like you have to speak up. You have to join this conversation. So that's what sparked it for me.
I would just add, I very much echo the sentiments of my fellow panelists. And again, I'm just so privileged to be in this space. So thank you, Tiffany, for the invite. I feel like we know the work that needs to be done, and we consistently get it done in terms of showing up to vote, in terms of doing the organizing work to address issues that are impacting our community, our loved ones, our families. And I think now in this moment, as more than ever, we're I think 22, 21 days out from this election. We recognize what is at stake for our society, for our communities, and what the implications can be if we do not show up and use our voice through voting, if we do not show up in spaces to, serve in leadership roles, whether it be on a board, on an advisory committee, to we even serving within individuals, spaces of faith. Like, we recognize that influence will then dictate, what decisions get made, and, power is where is that ultimate thing that we strive for. And we recognize that there is a lot of capability we can do in terms of enacting change if we were in those right spaces and, we do that work. And so I think for a lot of us, we don't feel that we can do anything other than that, which is gonna be really hard, because I also think about what does that mean for our self-care and self-love. I go through that a lot as well too in my work. I very much I can't not take it home, because I think about the communities that are not going to have the resources that they need or be served in a certain way. I think about the nonprofits I work with daily who are trying to help people stay in their neighborhoods and fight just really challenging issues. And so it is really challenging as well. So, I think about too, how do we support each other and take space? But it really is the work that is so imperative for us to lead changes and address these systemic issues that are so rooted in things that have been in our society, in our laws, in our communities for decades. And it's going to take a long time to really address those. So I think we recognize we have to be in this work into the long run as well. And so for me, that's why I'm in it and will continue to be in it.
Yeah, and that actually is the perfect segue into the next question, honestly, which is, being that your careers in some capacity are centered around politics and civic engagement, how much is politics a part of your personal life? Is the first part of the question, because for some people, politics only comes up during, a primary election, right? Or a season of some necessary voting, right? But for you, how is it a part of your personal life? And do you believe that we as Black women can separate ourselves from political engagement? Naomi, since you were the last one and you were kind
Yeah.
of talking about it, feel free to jump in on that.
I feel like, well, for my work, so I lead my organization's approach to systems change. So that means policy advocacy. So I'm constantly meeting with elected officials at the city, state, and at times staff at the federal level to talk about issues that are coming up from community and how policy change can be really impactful in addressing our affordable housing needs, addressing our climate crisis. Right now I'm in the midst of we're supporting 6 ballot measures, and so I'm on strategy calls. I'm getting grants out to nonprofits to help support their get out the vote efforts. Our ballot guide just went out. I'm doing panels like this to talk about the importance of voting. So, my role is a little bit unique. So it's very much embedded in my work. So I try in my outside community engagement to do a little bit more on the nonprofit side, but it all bleeds over because, our elected officials and people running for office they come from community, they come from the nonprofit space, the government space too. And so I also say that too, in that our elected officials, they're just like us. They're human beings. They have families. They like to work out. They try to find balance as well too. So I say that as well to just hopefully make people feel less intimidated about, building relationships with their elected officials, which I will say now, I will say later. I think that's a great thing that you all can do, is get to know who those people are that are representing you, get to know the issues they care about, go to town halls, go to the one-on-one meetings. My city council member will host coffees once a month, and you can just pop in and talk to her about issues that you care about and see how she's working to address them through policy, through the budget. I think that's a really great way to also just figure out what are issues that our government partners are working to address, and how you can be a part of the solutions they're hoping to create, so that they're actually keeping community a part of the ideation of strategies. So I think there's, it bleeds over. The only last thing I'll say too is, politics can be tricky in terms of what your beliefs might be, but I always try to go back to we elect people to govern, to create policy, to vote on things. And that is not intended to be political. It's really, the work that they are charged to do on our behalf as community members. So just, keep that in mind when you're looking to get into this space of social change and kind of advocating for your community.
Shianne, this question is for you. Thank you so much, Naomi. What is your take on the statement, "I don't care about politics," or "politics has nothing to do with me"? Like when you hear community
Yeah,
members say that.
I have a whole spiel, and I have this campaign that I actually built out, but I haven't shared. It's just everything is politics. Everything is politics. How you get seniority level at your job is politics. How you have to join the union is politics, right? How your life insurance is decided is politics. How your health insurance is decided is politics. How you, because this happened on my street, how we don't have there's street cleaning on this street, but there's no street cleaning on the next street. But in the hills, they don't have street cleaning, so they don't get tickets. That's politics, because politics is money and money is power. And so when someone says politics doesn't matter, first things I say is and you can keep it as real as possible, right? Your friends or your family who might be fighting cases, that's politics. The DA, the district attorney, that's politics. Your friends or family who might be victims of violence, and how they get the resolve from that, the next step from that, is politics. Your student, I work in education policy, so how students in particular districts have low access to digital, the digital equity, the digital divide, they have low access to that, how they have lower literacy rates, how they have no IEP translation. Some families are waiting 6 months for their IEP to be translated in their own language. And we recently passed a bill that co-authored a bill that still didn't resolve the problem. But that was politics, right? Because how money is divided, and I study politics, and the real question of political science answer really is what is that? It's just the determination of who gets what, how, and when. So if you want to have a say so and who gets what, how, and when, then you need or should be involved in politics. And maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe the election doesn't matter to you because it doesn't hit home in the general election, right? Maybe President Trump or Vice President Kamala Harris, that doesn't matter. You think it's gonna get decided here on out. But guess what? The school board member that your students go to, the schools go to, that directly hits home, because when they decide if your child gets a better education or lesser education from the students in this other district, or when your mayor or when your city councilman or your, wherever you are, alderman or whoever your state representative is, when they make a decision that closes down your favorite businesses or raises up the cost, or now you got to pay for parking in the place that you used to park for free, that's politics.
Yeah.
Politics is decision making, and the money and the power and influence that goes around is how people experience politics and how people experience a different world than others. And so that's how I answer the question. I keep it really real. I know you previously asked, like, how do you, like, I don't really separate politics out of my life. Like, I'm not talking about it at the dinner table, but I've built community around people who have shared interests. So like, I saw a few of my friends, my homegirls in the Norshell and LaQuisha and the participants. Those are my friends. I met them politicking, but we can go out for drinks, we can hang
Right.
out. I'm not at the dinner table talking to my husband and like calling my mom about like these things that are going crazy. But if my husband randomly asks, like, hey, like, what's going on with this small business stuff? I just saw the county advisor post. I'm like, oh yeah, they just recently passed this, that did this. Because like, being informed, if you have a doctor in your family, you have a lawyer in your family, you have a clinician in your family, you have a mental health, therapist or in your family, you need a politician in your family. You need not your family, but in your friend circle. Everyone
Right.
talks about like building resources and building communities around. So I have a 1-year-old. I don't know if you can hear her, but she's like starting to talk. Like, we build communities around like the professions that like help us in our everyday life, and you need a person in policy too, because we need people who can speak our language and translate the things that are going on in places where it gets a little bit too much jargon to like our everyday lives, and we need to solve the problem. And so I think that's how I answer the question. I feel like we got to keep it real. That's why I like, a lot of the I say new Black, but the new era of like Black women and Black people in general in politics, because they brought new power in and new dynamics in. So it's not like the old way. And we're even seeing that with Vice President Kamala's campaign. It's not the old way the Democrats do it, because we need to make sure, we talked about legacy earlier, we need to make sure that we pass down like the involvement in our communities. Like, at one point there was no choice. Like, at one point we were fighting to have a voice, and then we, for some reason, we kind of gave that power away. And so it's important, not away, but
People got comfortable.
wielded
People got
a lot of
comfortable.
that
Yeah.
power, and some of us have been like trying to hold on to it. I think
Yeah.
it's important, whether annoying or not, that we continue to bring the conversation into everyday lives, but that we don't force it on, like, just how people don't want religion forced on them. I think that we need to do the same thing with politics.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. I think that the beauty of progress is also the pain of progress, right? People see progress in some facets of life, so they automatically think that, oh, well, everybody has these rights, or everybody has this access, or et cetera, and they're not very attuned to the way that there are still inequities going on. There's still inequality going on. Just because you might see more young people of color becoming millionaires because they're business coaches and all these coaches on social media, right? Or all these social media influencers get to become seven-figure earners. I think people think like, okay, well, there's more social mobility, so that must mean that we have a ticket in to do more in the society. And in many ways, we are still very oppressed and limited in a lot of freedoms as Black people. And that is another part of the conversation. Tamara is one of my legal professionals in my circle. When I have a question, I'd be like, girl, can you answer this, or can you send me this resource? So I thought that was really funny that you mentioned that. Interested in your perspective, Tamara, as a legal professional, how politics show up in your life, and is it something that can be separated?
So generally, I don't think that politics can be separated out of anybody's life in general for many of the reasons that Shianne pointed out earlier. I mean, I'm a mother, I have school-age kids, and that matters. Who is running the school board, so I think when you introduce the conversation at the level that people can identify with, what's really important to you day to day, what are the things that are troubling you day to day, you start there, and as Shianne mentioned, there's politics connected to all of those aspects. There were a couple of things that she touched on that just really resonated with me. I mean, it boils down to things like the streets that you drive down. Is there money, is there funding to fix the streets? Is there money, is there access to healthcare, the safety of your neighborhood? All of these matter to, as it relates to like who you're putting in office and what is important to them and the moves that they're making to make sure that I can walk down my street and feel safe. I can go to Oakland and feel like the politicians care about what's happening in the streets of Oakland. There are businesses closing every day. That's politics, right? People can't afford to keep their doors open. On a regular basis, I'm in Oakland talking to business owners in Oakland, trying to come up with creative ways to bring foot traffic there, right? There are companies that are not even requiring their employees to return to the office, right? So there's no foot traffic on the streets. Mm-hmm. How are businesses supposed to stay open? Yeah. What are the city officials doing to make people feel safe about coming back to work? That's politics, right? And then from a legal perspective, we're thinking about, lawsuits that are filed, right? Since 2023, there have been, and this is according to Bloomberg, there have been about maybe more than 165 lawsuits that are related across different states in the United States related to this election. It's either, dealing with voter suppression type issues. It's, vote by mail, who can do it, who can't do it. All of these things that are designed to make people afraid, right? To make people question this election. Well, there are fear tactics that are being employed. And all of these things, people don't consider when we're thinking about this election. It's more than just, who's going to be the president of the United States. It's what's happening at a local level. And, what I am as a lawyer concerned about, in this next election, we've got Supreme Court justices that are 70 years old, right? And if we had a lesson learned from the death of the notorious RBG, who was, I think, 88 when she died, still on the bench, we've got to think about, the fact that there are 3 conservative justices that are 69, 76, 74, Justice Alito, Justice Sotomayor is a Democrat. She's 70 something years old, right? So in the next couple of years, they could be up for retirement. So the next president could potentially decide who those much younger Supreme Court justices that could potentially die in office for, many years to come. That's very important when you're thinking about your rights as a human being that have been played with and, and put in front of an overly conservative Supreme Court. What is the potential?
Go down. Mommy go use the bathroom.
What is the potential of another? Brandy, can you mute? What is the potential if we have another conservative president in the White House? If you look at the Senate, there are 34 Senate seats up for election this year. The Senate right now, we have a Democratic majority. However, if you actually look at the numbers, there's 47 seats held by Democrats, 49 by the Republicans. But we have a Democratic majority because we have independent senators that are on the side of the Democrats. That margin is just very, 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 very slim. So when you got 34 seats, you got to think about, that impacts you here at a lower level, right? So those are the things that I think about as an attorney. Like there's a lot at stake here. And, you know, this impacts my day to day. This impacts me as an individual. So it's always personal. It is never, to me, just political. There's just way too much at stake.
And as we were kind of talking about my experience at the Black Love Summit event, one of the things that Kerry Washington brought up is when I'm voting, I'm not just voting for me, I'm voting for my children and my children's future, right? And so as a person who is a mother, who is a parent, right? Or who has younger nieces or nephews or godchildren or anyone that you deem of as important that's younger than you, I do, that is something to also consider, right? Like you are voting for other people's future, not just your present, you know? And that's a really, really salient point. The next question I have for you all, and whoever would like to answer can. What issues on the federal level do you feel like either are not getting enough amplification that people need to be mindful of, or maybe are, and it is something of major concern to you that's being tossed up right now?
I can start. It's pretty wonky.
Okay.
During President Trump's administration, the Tax Jobs and Cuts Act was passed. It's very, very wonky, but it deals with taxes. It deals with corporate taxes. It deals with individual taxes. There's some reporting out now that really gets into what the impacts have been in terms of like how it impacts individuals, like ability to give to charitable purposes. You know, what have the impacts been to the budget? A lot of folks on the Hill are calling it the tax Super Bowl because a lot of those provisions are set to expire next year. So depending on what the makeup is of the administration, to Tamara's point, Congress, that will really dictate how some of those provisions are either renewed, if they're going to expire. But that really impacts our federal budget and the current deficit. That's going to impact taxation on all of our individual federal taxes. If people own small businesses, it's going to impact that as well too. And so it hasn't even gotten as much conversation as we think about VP Harris and President Trump's um, platforms as it relates to taxes. I know they've come out with other positions, but that I think it's something that will be really interesting just as we think about some of the things that were done during the Trump administration that were intended to provide relief to certain individuals and corporations of a certain income level, and actually put a lot more tax burden on the middle class. And so I know VP Harris has a plan for how she and Governor Walz will address a lot of the challenges as it relates to housing, as it relates to the costs of childcare, and those are also really important. But I think some of this wonkier aspects around taxation could have some huge implications, and those are things that we should watch for as well, because there was a lot of, I think what was brought up before around money and influence in the policymaking process, and thus politics, that will come up again too, and depending again on how the makeup of Congress and the outcomes of the presidential could really sway, you know, how that policy is shaped or not.
Thank you. Shianne or Tamara, any issues that you want to encourage people to look at, or maybe not even encourage people, but any issues that are on top of your mind as really important on the federal level?
I'm a local girl. I'm a local and state girl. And honestly, Naomi got really dug deeper in it. But like for me, it's taxes. Like I think that people always wonder why their taxes are so high and always trying to figure out a way to finagle or figure out their taxes. But that's like a federal thing. And I think that I know you didn't answer this question, ask this question, but I think that really goes into like why it's important, as you mentioned earlier, to be involved in both the general, the primary, and maybe local or special elections, because like your issues are tied to different elections. Like if taxes is an issue, like why does the billionaire like pay less taxes than the like single mom of 3 kids? Like why do small businesses pay more taxes than corporations? Like that's important because like we're small businesses. My mom is a small business owner. My husband is a small business owner. A lot of Black people, whether they're selling shea butters or providing tech solutions, are small business owners. But it's really hard for people to push through or fight through, like to get to that next level. And we vote on that when we vote on like the people who make those federal laws, right? Like the presidency. And then so I think that it's important just to lay out, like to just say like this is why the general election is important for large issues that affects like states and all of the states, and then funding to those states, especially on localized issues. And then there's like state and local elections that are still happening during the general elections, that each person has a different role or responsibility to maybe something you're interested in, if it's criminal justice or housing, which is really big here in California. I know, Naomi, you're not in California, but Oakland, the Bay Area, like it's crazy. And like Black people are the majority, like we're the majority of the homeless population. When we think about like who's going to be giving like state $billions of funding, we have to make sure that we're voting people in office on the state, local, and federal level who can lock arms and funnel funding and funnel and remove loopholes and remove like setbacks that disenfranchise like us, like not anybody else, us. And like, you know, there are a lot of cultural things that are implicated when it comes to Black people and housing versus other like low income communities. But it's really important to note that there is a major importance in voting on different levels of the government when it comes to like synchronizing and unification on issues that require all branches of government.
Thank you. That actually leads me to the next question. What are some resources you would recommend folks can tap into to inform their decisions around voting, especially people that are like, I don't really know my perspective. I don't even know the difference between the federal, the state, the local. I don't even know what I'm going to do. If it's not just voting for a president, how do I find out information? Do you have any reliable resources that you would recommend?
So vote411.org is one of the ones that you can go to, where they've really tried to make it so easy for you to just, it's all in one place. You go in, and this is not just the state of California, this is across the country. You can go in, type in your home address, and it will give you what's going to be on your ballot. And you can look at all the candidates, you can click and you can compare their policies, you can compare, you can look at candidate forums that they've participated in before, to the extent that they have, to the extent they've participated. You can do a comparison across candidates. So maybe you're still trying to decide between two candidates. Vote411.org is the place that I would recommend people start. And that's just because it's basically your one-stop shop. When you go on there, it lets you know when the next election is coming up. It lets you know, registration deadlines. And I think it's a good resource for people who may not have a lot of time, may not be informed about what's on the ballot, and it's nonpartisan. So if you want to kind of see pros and cons against certain propositions, that's a good place to start. For instance, and just kind of to add a little value to what was the previous question, for me, I'm thinking about, public safety issues and things like that, and the different propositions that are on the ballot that are related to that. That matters to me, particularly because my day in, day out is pretty much Oakland, California, where, there are a lot of concerns with just being able to park your car in the street. And, the difference between things that were normally considered, petty theft or, where you don't do any jail time or things like that. And potentially that could be elevated to a more serious crime. So if that, when you're thinking about what the details are of those types of measures and stuff, vote411.org is a place to kind of be able to read it in simplified terms and really kind of evaluate the pros and cons when you're trying to make that decision. And I really think that that is very important for people to be able to see not only what's happening at a national level, but what is also happening at a local level.
I would just add to, and I'm not sure, because I haven't voted in California for a while. You know, I'm really fortunate in the state that I live in, we do vote by mail. And so, and we have 14 statewide ballot measures. I have 9 ballot measures in Denver. So I have to like carve out time to really go through the ballot measures, the issues. So I think to the extent that you can go to your local election office's website, look at the ballot. There's sample ballots that are out to get understanding of like what are the ballot measures on. We also have a lot of like judicial reconfirmation, so like judges that have to get re-upped. So then you can take the time to like do your research. To Tamara's point, check out Vote 411. Our local, our like Colorado Public News, so our kind of statewide nonprofit news, they will do an analysis of each of the statewide ballot measures. I also encourage too, a lot of nonprofits that I work with will do their own ballot guides based off of ballot measure positions they've taken positions on or research that they've done on the issues. And I would say too, like, to the extent you can, make it a community event. You don't have to vote by yourself. So if you want to get some people together in your living room, have some drinks, have some food, and like talk this stuff out, do your research. I know a lot of folks that do that, and it just makes this process that can feel really intimidating a lot easier because you can ask each other questions. You can do some research on your phone so that if you're filling your vote ballot out together, if you're able to do that where you live, you can do that together, or you can like know going into voting in person if that's what you choose to do where you are. Because I remember when I first started voting in California, we'd have to go vote in person. I was stressed out. I was like, I don't know what to do on these. And then the ballots just kept getting longer, and it's just, it can feel like a lot. And I think to the points raised by Shianne before too, the local issues are sometimes the most important, and that's sometimes where people give up and they don't fill out their ballot. And that is just truly a detriment to the community that you live in, because that can help determine who's representing at city council. Is that local bond measure going to pass? It's going to help fund a new program that's going to get at some of these issues that are impacting your community. So I say, you know, use this time now to do your research on the issues. And make it a community event, because it just makes this kind of like this responsibility that we all have a little bit less intimidating.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a few things, one thing I wanted to add, like California sends out, or Los Angeles County sends out official sample ballots. So the first thing is to make a plan to vote, like make a plan to vote. Going and voting, and I know I've had this background, but my first time voted, I just like went inside, like went off the top of my head, but make a plan to vote. Find both a local influencer, like local, like not someone who has like, they don't have to have millions of followers, but the women here are influencers. We all have like, we're all micro influencers in our own way who are educated in this space. I have friends who are like, Shy, send me the ballot guide. I'm here now. And I'm like, I have like a thing that I made. I'm making one now where I send it to them. And so make a informed decision. I like in California, and I'm going to drop it in the chat, Cal Matters is a really good nonprofit, nonpartisan, meaning they don't do it for money and they don't do it for a particular political party, because I am a part of the Democratic Party. So like, I mean, I make my own decisions, but like, obviously, like that's my bias. Like, I'm a Democrat. And so other people might not feel the same. So make sure that you follow information that is nonpartisan. So, and I really like Cal Matters. Not only do they give like a very thorough response on like the ballot, like they have videos in multiple languages that define that break down what a yes is, what a no is, without giving a recommendation. And then also they have a really good like newsroom. So like one of them, one of the things I read today was California gave $500 billion to affordable housing. No one got a cent. Like, that is not for anyone. That's like definitely based on the facts. And I think right now where facts and information is just being, I remember on the call that we had last time, Rock the Vote, with a young woman who worked in, cyber security or election security. And you have so much influence in terms of the information we get. So it's important to find trusted resources, but to definitely, this is in a mail with everyone, Naomi. This is a vote by mail state also. So we all should have our ballots in our mailbox. You can register in person. If you don't register by the deadline this week, you make a provisional ballot. So we're very like sort of liberal progressive when it comes to that. So there's really no excuse for us not to vote. You could take the day off. Lyft and Uber provide free rides. And so I think that it's really important to make it just an everyday common thing, even if it's like us not shaming the people who don't want to read this, who are like, who to vote for. And we send them like, here are my recommendations, so that they at least did their civic service and they felt engaged without feeling judged. Because I think it's very important what's happening now online is there a discourse like, why would you do this? Why would you do this? And people still have their own innate right to do whatever they want. And so it's important that we encourage them to be involved. And once they're in there and once they feel the outcome of that, then we can work on like persuading them or educating them deeper. But we still have to meet people where they are and encourage them to get out and vote, and to vote all the way down the ballot. Don't just go vote for the president and walk away. Like, no, you need to vote for the vice president, the senator, the statesperson, the homegirl, whatever it says, whether you know them or not. If you have a recommendation, it's important for us to vote down the ballot because it's key issues across the board.
One thing that I just wanted to add to is that look into your community organizations. Organizations like your area NAACP, your area, particularly for the Black community, your area NAACP, your area sororities, women's rights groups, things like that, that can kind of help you to really break down some of the more complicated things. For instance, and I'm just going to make this plug, and I can send the thing to you, Tiffany. Project 2025 is something that everybody's like, ooh, this big scary thing, but nobody has really taken the time to read it, and nobody really knows what it's all about, right? So, there are organizations like the NAACP and Delta Sigma Theta, League of Women's Voters, that are putting on a seminar, a webinar, just so they can break that down and you can ask your questions and you can hear those things. That's Saturday, October 19th, which is the Saturday coming up. Those are these, when you're thinking about what is impacting the Black community, it's a helpful resource to look into the area Black organizations that are championing these causes, right? Because they care about what's happening in the Black community too, right? So I would say we've got 20 days left. We've got 20 days left until until the election. I have it on my phone, so I can't drop it in chat, but I will get it to you as soon as possible if you can send it to the folks that are in the thing.
Anything that y'all share, I'm gonna share out after this in the recap.
Right. So we have 20 days left before the election, and every one of these days has to count. Just give me 2 more seconds to just add this on. There are things that you can do right now at your level, like our unhoused community. That is a substantial part of the population that will never even go and make sure that they're registered to vote. Partly because a barrier to registering to vote is having an address. In places like San Francisco, they have made it so that you can register to the closest cross section that you frequent, right? You can register to the San Francisco City Hall. Look in your community and see if there's something that's similar. The other part is younger folks. They're in California at 16 years old, you can pre-register to vote. So go ahead and get it out of the way right now, right? In Oakland and Berkeley, 16 and 17-year-olds are able to vote for their I always say student council, but their school board. They can vote in those elections. So see what you can do today. Those are small measures that you can do today. In San Francisco, if you're in the San Francisco area, Glide Church in San Francisco has an effort to make sure that the unhoused population gets registered to vote. You can reach out to them and see how you can be beneficial. So there's lots of ways, lots of resources to educate yourself, but also to make sure that you can take steps at your level at a personal level. Thank you.
Listen, y'all literally all answered like an additional 4 or 5 questions I was gonna ask. So I love it. The last thing I would want to know is what You know, people talk about how distractions happen, right, when there's big things going on. So what would you say are any distractions that people should be mindful of so that they can stay focused on, what's coming up in this season?
I would say stop focusing on the Diddy trial until after the election. We can all assemble and talk about what's happening in Hollywood after the election. Right now, we need to focus all of our efforts on making sure that at a very basic level, your household is registered to vote. Your best friend, and mine is on the call, is registered to vote. She's telling her sisters, her church community, all of these people that are within your immediate touch. Are they registered? Do they have a plan to vote?
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, any distractions be mindful of, and last thoughts. Shianne or Naomi?
I think there's like an obvious distraction, which is someone who's also trying to be the president. I think there's going to continue to be a lot of just salacious things in the media around this election. And I think what can be frustrating too is just negative things that are said about VP Harris. There's also like very just concerning things said about I learned recently that the Georgia legislature actually put into law that all of the ballots will have to be hand counted in Georgia, which is just, it puts so much stress on those poll workers. It's just, it's wrong for so many reasons. And so I think we can get frustrated, and we should take a moment to be frustrated about like, these are the current systems that exist, but also go back to like, have I talked to all of my friends and family members to make sure they have a plan to vote? Have I shared the resources that I know of to make sure people know what to vote for and feel comfortable voting the entire ballot? Do I have friends, family, loved ones, colleagues in swing states to make sure that they, have the resources that they need to vote? Can I give a couple minutes a day to send some text messages, make some phone calls, however you want to show up, whether it be for a candidate, a ballot measure, or what have you? Do I have $5 I can spare? So I think, taking just, it could be very intimidating, but like taking a little bit of time out of your schedule every day up until election day so that you can turn in your ballot and just feel like I have done my part will just go a really long way. So I think it would be my parting words to the folks that have joined us for this evening and made the time to come here when they could be at other places this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, well, one, I want to say like breaking news, like today, Washington Post shared that a Georgia judge blocked that. So they don't have to hand count it. And today there was record breaking, I believe it was like over 250,000 ballots casted today in Georgia. And usually it's around only 135. So there's so much momentum, and I think that one thing that we can do is like it sort of goes into like the positive and negative energy thing. Like you can put your focus on what's wrong and the negativity and looking for perfect, or you could put your focus on the positive and the outcomes that can happen regardless, right? Regardless of all the other factors. And so my parting words will be like, it's never too late engage, and there's no level of sophistication that's required for political engagement. I think a lot of people feel that you have to be, graduate in school and be engaged and done it for umpteen years. Of some of the most powerful people I've ever met, I've ever organized with, or I've ever met with, or even passed policy with. Some of them didn't even have a high school graduation, high school, degrees. Some of them are immigrants. Like some of them are like caregivers and union workers. It does not matter who you are. You don't have to be in the highest level or lowest level. There's none of that matters. Like class doesn't matter when it comes to our vote, because all of our votes, regardless of who we are, social economic status, it's only one vote, one person, right? Like my vote, regardless if I'm like in politics or a Democrat or whatever those things that can be that we named in our bio, I still only have one vote. And so like my vote and your vote and the person next to me's vote is just as important, and they have an equal value. And so I think that's really important when we think about the grand scheme of things, is that we can't let the people with the power of influence like shy us away with negativity for us not to be actively engaged because they know that our engagement can tip the scale the other way and push the needle further than what they want. And so I think it's important to encourage people that there's no level of acumen required to be civically engaged, and that your participation is based on the issues that that concern you, and you don't have to deal with anybody else's issues when it comes to your personal civic political engagement.
Oh, y'all are just amazing. Thank you so much for this evening. Such a rich conversation. I hope that y'all connect with each other because you all are just you're out of the box thinkers, and that's always appreciated. Would you like to share how folks can get in contact with you or anything that you might be doing during this time that you want folks to tap into?
I'm happy to share my email address in just because I live in another state. I still very much try to follow all things in California because it's still my home. But happy to talk to folks. I definitely agree with a lot of the everything that's been said, but reinforcing what Shianne said around. I just think there's so much potential for people to get plugged in and be a part of these decision-making bodies that will determine where funding is going for programs where, we're going to have a census coming up again and redistricting. And so there's just so many spaces where they need representation that is actually going to help make sure that things are done in an equitable way. And so would happy to be a thought partner and share any resources or just thoughts on how you can plug into things. And I agree, it just takes, I think, figuring out what you care about and what aspect of the work you enjoy. So happy to get to be a thought partner and happy to share my info.
Wonderful.
I
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say I dropped my in the chat, but I also provided my email address for those people who are, either in the Bay Area and they're looking to figure out how they can get engaged, or in the state of California, because I am a part of an organization that represents lawyers across the state of California. But one of the things that Shianne mentioned, I just want to say this as my final thought, is that we talk about the powers that be. And I think it's really important that we really think about how we are getting more of our own voices to become the powers that be. For instance, here in the Bay Area, there's a sister by the name of Rhodesia Ransom, who's out in the Central Valley of California. She is, in November, when she's elected, she'll be the first Black person, I wanted to be very specific, the first Black person representing the Central Valley. So while, we want to keep on pushing people to take leadership positions, because the more voices that we have that look like ours, that are really committed to our causes, the more we have to, the more we'll be in position to kind of see more of the changes that, we are pushing for that represent our interests. So I think we need to, if you look at the Legislative Black Caucus, we've got 14 and like 5 of them are terming this year. So, it's things like that you've really got to pay attention to. When you've got a limited number of voices, you got a limited number of people that are qualified and stepping up. And then you've got people that are the seats at the table that are leaving the table. What can we do to get more people that look like us into those leadership roles?
Wonderful. Thank y'all ladies so much. I hope that you have amazing evenings and you take care of yourself, especially going through this season where I know that this is not the only time you're talking to somebody and trying to convince somebody. So I know that y'all are pretty busy. So please make sure to take care of yourself, because your resistance is a political statement, but so is your joy and your self-care and you taking care of yourself. Okay. Love y'all so much. Thank you all. I'll be sending out information, and happy voting and civic engagement, y'all.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.